Oh, we're live. All right. What's going on, everybody? We are currently live, episode 75 of a Guy Think podcast live experience. I mean, we're just cruising right along. It's nonstop, but I love it. For those people that are new, just so you guys know that I am not a political podcast, but more like a variety show. I do a lot of different things on this show. So I just don't have politics. I just don't have sports. I have a wide variety of guests on my show, just people that I find interesting, people that my viewers find interesting. I always want to have interesting conversation and learn a little bit more that I don't currently know. So thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. I'm always excited to do these podcasts, as I always talk about. So welcome to the live experience. Guys, it's Monday. I got to be honest with you. I'm a little tired over the weekend, but it's been a good weekend. And I wanted to thank our guest from last week, Denise Casal from Dining Divas TV in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What a great story. What a great guest she was. She told her story of success and how she's been able to help women, in her community and do a lot of coaching and mentoring. She's great. She's so cool. I'm actually going to see her this Wednesday night at Celebrity Boxing, Tuscan Prime, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Cool spot. You got to check it out. We're going to be doing a celebrity boxing event, open casting call. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yours truly is a part of the celebrity boxing team. Stay tuned for more news. I'll leak it out as quickly as I can. Also, do me a favor, guys. It helps me grow the show. Follow me all over social media at A Guy Think Podcast for all the latest news of what's going on and what guests that I have coming on the show. I do have some really cool, exciting news for 2020. I've only been doing this podcast for a year and a half, but it's been a blessing for me because I've had so much fun meeting a lot of different people, a lot of interesting people, and, most importantly, growing with the podcast. And it's all thanks to the guys and girls that listen to my podcast. Thank you so much. I really, from the bottom of my heart, truly appreciate all of you guys. You're the best. You could also go on my website, guythinkpodcast.com, for all the analytics, for the amount of views that I get, the amount of listeners that I have on the podcast version, and also the previous guests that I've had on the show. So it's pretty cool. And then, of course, subscribe. That really helps me grow the show, reach a wider audience, and get more interesting guests on the show. Please, guys, especially if it's first-time listeners, you could DM me. I will respond to you. Tell me what you're interested in hearing. It could be anything. I'll be happy to accommodate. I have a lot of requests, but I always answer my DMs. So thank you, guys. Quick shout-out to my sponsors, Deck Masters of South Florida. Real quickly, if you need a deck, if you need some fancy stuff, put it in your yard, by your pool, or on your porch, and you're in South Florida, these are the people you want to see. Deckmastersofsouthflorida.com. Check them out. And, of course, my boy, Frank Cristiano, Cross Country Mortgages, 561-504-1278. He's the best in the game. The best. I'm talking the best. The guy answers the phone during sex. That's how dedicated this man is to his craft. He closes loan in 7 days. 7 days. So keep that in mind, guys. Hit him up. The phone number will be there the entire episode. But today's guest is Karyn Turk out of South Florida. Karyn is a big conservative media personality. She's Miss Florida from 2016. She's had a lot been going on in the news lately. Originally, I was going to do this episode where Karyn was going to debate with a person that's liberal, and we were going to kind of get two takes of things that's going on in politics. But recent events, things have changed. So we're going to talk about what's been going on with her. So I do want to welcome her onto the podcast. So we're going to get her up right now. Karyn.
Hey, Joe.
How you doing? Welcome to the show.
I've been better, but good to be back with you.
Mm-hmm. Same here. The last episode we did was actually pretty much when I first started this podcast, way back when, episode 10. And that was in my buddy's warehouse, which was kind of funny. It was a funny story because I remember talking to you, and I had a studio at Cross Country Mortgages, which we call Cross Country Studios. Yeah. And we're all set and ready to go. And at the last minute, they had an event going on. I couldn't do the podcast there. And it was so funny. I was like, hey, listen, I don't want to cancel.
A dark warehouse in an alleyway.
I know. It's like, I really don't want to cancel on you, and I feel bad. I mean, we could still do it, but it's in like my friend's warehouse. It's in a real dark, gloomy place. I don't know if you want to go there, and you're like, nah, that's good. I carry a gun. I'm fine. I was like, all right, pretty cool. Come on down. Let's go. So
it was all good.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Good to be here. I mean, it could have been under better circumstances. I always do like debating liberals. That's really my favorite thing to do. But, either way, as long as I can get on here and I can get my message out, it's a really important message that people need to hear.
Yeah, I think so. So from what I've seen in the news, I guess, we'll get right to it. But what I've seen in the news is there's been charges that have been formally pressed against you and solidified in court for Social Security fraud charges. So a lot of people have seen the news. They've read stuff on the internet as well as I have. So we got, the media side, but, more importantly, I wanted to get your side of it because I always like to get two sides to the story so I could come up with my own opinion of it. And I think the viewers want to hear it as well. So please tell me your take on these recent charges.
Well, there's a reason that I named my show Behind the Headlines, and it didn't really have anything to do with me personally at the time, but it's funny how things happen, and, God always has a plan. And, when you go on the internet and you look things up, you see all these really eye-grabbing headlines, Mrs. Florida's going to jail. And, let's be honest, it's a sexy headline. It's a lot sexier than, mom dies covered in bed sores at the hands of a nursing home who, neglected my mother. And I understand why the media is slanting it that way. And I understand what they do to get eyeballs these days. And I also understand that we're in an environment that's extremely politically charged and divisive right now. And that comes into play here. And all of these haters and these trolls on the internet that want to act like this has nothing to do with anything, I can assure you that it 100% does. Because I am a conservative, I am being judged totally differently than anybody else would be. Absolutely, 100%.
What do you think the main reason of that is?
I think the main reason right now is just our culture. I mean, I think we've really come into this, this environment now where you have people that are so opposed to this president and so opposed to anybody that calls himself a conservative that they will stop at nothing to discredit us, to slant the media towards us, against us, to slant the media towards them, to, do anything to really judge us and demean us. And if you look at the comments today on your Facebook page and on your thread, it's very obvious that there's a huge bias. And that's not just based on the headline. It's based on the headline that contains the word conservative. That's what this is about.
All right. So the charges in court, from what they were saying was that, but I'm just going by what the media was saying, but they were saying that you were spending money on this lavish lifestyle. And all this stuff. So basically what they were trying to say was that you didn't spend any of the Social Security checks on your mother's health. It was all spent on your personal gain. So what's your take on that?
There's a couple of factors here. I think the first and foremost factor is the fact that I paid back every single cent that the government asked me to pay back. There was not a penny that I did not pay back. So as far as stealing the money, if the money's paid back, I understand if I made a mistake, I took total responsibility for that. Everybody needs to remember, I pled guilty. I pled guilty to a misdemeanor. I have never been in trouble in my entire life. I have no criminal history. I've never been accused of anything like this. And I did. I took a plea. I felt that it was the best avenue for me to take. I followed my attorney's advice. I, am remorseful for mistakes that were made. I took full and total responsibility. Plus, the money was paid back to the government. But yet I was treated very unfairly. My attorneys are appealing that. And, I do have a pretty strong case for appeal from what they say. And I definitely feel that I was judged completely differently based on my political affiliation and based on the fact that I am a public figure. And when the judge handed down the sentencing, he made it very clear that he was going to make an example of me because of my status as a public figure. And my attorneys really felt that that was something that was appealable.
Mm-hmm. So what was your experience like in court? I mean, did you feel like there was a lot of bias towards you because you're conservative, or what was that? Or was it pretty fair? What did you think?
It's pretty much a witch hunt on the part of the executive director of the nursing home. I have an unlawful death suit against the nursing home for the death of my mom. A lot of people, I know a lot of people are probably going to comment on your thread and they're going to say, why didn't you just move your mom? And I assure you that it was not that simple. You know,
what was holding you back from moving her? Like, were they like, I don't know what it's like, because I never had a parent in a nursing facility, but what is the experience like if you wanted to move them?
There's a number of factors. It's really a terrible system. You know, the first problem that I had is my mother, at the time that I decided I really needed to pull the plug and I really needed to move her, was what they call Medicaid pending. And if anybody understands what it means when you have an elderly person that's Medicaid pending, it means that Medicaid is going to start to kick in to pay for some of the services to the nursing home. And I had gotten to the point where my mother would be Medicaid pending. And unfortunately, there are not a lot of nursing homes that want to take somebody. They want those private pay clients. They want the private pay clients. They don't want those Medicaid patients. So I was in a situation when I started to believe that I needed to move my mother, that I was having a really hard time getting a facility to take her. So I felt that it was better to work with the facility and try to get the help of state agencies like the Florida Ombudsman, who I called multiple times and thought would be on my side and thought they would intervene and help my mother. And, you know, unfortunately, I found out that the system doesn't work for families. It actually works, in my opinion, for these nursing homes. And it was a really terrible situation, and it got harder and harder. And I couldn't move my mom, so I was forced to try to kind of work with them. And then they were billing me amounts that were just so much higher than whatever their regular rates are, and any rate that they ever charged a private pay client. And that, to me, really was glaring, that like, what's wrong here? This is all about the money. This isn't all about the Benjamins. And a lot of people have commented on your thread mentioning that I'm all about the Benjamins. Well, what about this nursing home that was more concerned about profits than they were about my mother? And then they hired a very litigious law firm, and you can check out the headlines on them as well. You can do a little research. And there's really been a broken guardianship system in Palm Beach County for a very long time. And these lawyers have been involved in it time and time again. And there was a jury award against them for $16 million for another family that they wronged. And I feel that this is very much a similar situation. So once things got really contentious with the nursing home, and I was battling back and forth and trying to figure out how I could get them to help me. You know, I have adult kids too. We were regularly in this nursing home, despite the reports in the media. And, you know, they just got meaner and meaner and tougher. And in came these lawyers. And once the lawyers got involved, the game changed. And then I saw a light, because they came and said, let's appoint a professional guardian. And I didn't know anything about the guardianship system. I didn't know how broken this system was. So as soon as they said guardian, I thought, hey, great. You know what? Here's somebody who's going to be an independent party, who's going to come in and who's going to help me, help my family, help us fight the nursing home, help us get better care for my mom. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that in no way happened. This person was basically an extension of that nursing home and an extension of that law firm. And it was not good. And at that point, my hands were tied, because once you have a guardian in place, my rights were taken away. So it didn't matter how much I kicked and screamed for my mom. They had put her in place, and she was the person that was responsible. And, you know, we found my mother face down, bruised all over her face. We tried to get help. We begged and pleaded, and nobody would help us, because the only person that can communicate on her behalf was the guardian. And it was a really, really, really ugly situation. And it ultimately led to my mother's death. And my mom died in horrific conditions with bed sores all over her body. And I filed an unlawful death suit. And I truly believe that that's part of the reason that they've come after me so aggressively. And the executive director of that nursing home came to court with a little posse, a whole bunch of people. I think some that have probably commented on your Facebook page. And, you know, it's a witch hunt at this point. That's what it's been, and that's what it still is.
One of the things I take pride in on my podcast is that I always remain neutral, because I like to give people the opportunity to speak and tell their side of the story with no judgment coming from me. My viewers is different. You know, my viewers are my viewers, so they have their own opinions. They're going to say what they're going to say. Half of these people, maybe more than half, I really don't know. Personally, we're not friends on Facebook or whatever, but that's fine. But the cool thing about my podcast is that it's live, and I'm able to have my viewers interact live with my guests on the show. So I have questions that I want to ask, but there may be questions that I don't even think of asking. So that's why I always invite my viewers to be a part of the podcast and ask questions. So the first question I have is from Jan. Hello, Jan. Thank you for joining the podcast. Jan wanted to ask you a question. She says, when was the money paid back and to whom?
The money was paid back to the government, and that was part of my arrangement with them. And the money was paid in full. I wrote a check for the full amount that they requested.
Good. Okay. So that answers that. Yeah. So yeah, and again, guys, I do invite anybody to ask questions. Karyn, look, Karyn's great. No matter what you've seen in the news, I've met Karyn before, and she's been nothing but great to me. So, feel free to ask her questions. She is here for a reason, to answer your questions. So, please do, guys. Please do. But Karyn, you had mentioned witch hunt. We've heard this term before from President Trump. So now you have brought this witch hunt up. So tell me, why do you feel these charges were a part of the witch hunt because of your political views? What's really making you feel that way?
Well, I think we're in an environment that's entirely politically divisive. That's the first thing. The second thing, and there are facts in this case, some of them that'll come out through, time, and certainly in the different cases that I have, the civil case, the unlawful death suit, the case, that we just got done with, that's over with. I'm now sentenced. We're going to appeal that. But there certainly was bias. And, the executive director of this nursing home actually took it upon himself to write letters to Democratic Congress people, other Democrats, Democrat lobbyists, and he took it upon himself to go ahead and do that. And he definitely did it in order to illustrate the fact that I was a Republican and that I was a conservative, and to create bias against me. There's no question about that. The letters are clear.
Okay. And what about your personal experience with the nursing home? I know there's a lot of back and forth going on. A lot from what I've read. I read that the nursing home said that you never went to go see your mom. Obviously, your statements have been totally different. So, I read all the stuff in the news, but what was your experience with the nursing home? How often did you visit your mom, and all those things? It was
horrible, and I was a regular visitor there. I was there caring for my mom. My daughters were in and out of the facility. They're grown women. Before that, I also had caregivers in and out of the facility, because remember, when I put my mom in this facility, I put my mom in and I had a private care duty aide with my mom, sitting with her, singing to her. I hired a music therapist. When I initially put her into this facility, my mom was coming from living independently. So, I wanted to make her transition as comfortably as possible. So I was in a situation where I felt it was important for her to have a quality of care and to have additional help. And I didn't trust this nursing home, quite frankly. I just didn't trust them. And for good reason, obviously. So there were caregivers in and out, whether it was me, my kids, private duty aides. There were people in that facility with my mother. And the fact that they want to now say that we didn't visit is just a complete fabrication. It's a convenient narrative for them to push their lack of responsibility. Mm-hmm. And they don't want to take responsibility for what they did for my mom. And it's just wrong, and it's horrendous. And the conditions that you were in were absolutely unacceptable. And the way she died was unacceptable. And, that's all going to come out in the unlawful death suit. And I feel that we have a really strong case, and so do my attorneys.
So I noticed a lot of people, this may be a common question. Again, I don't know. I don't have a parent that's in a nursing home. Yeah. But I'm just going to ask it because I noticed it was asked a lot. So that's my Brooklyn accent coming out. But a lot of people saying, well, you had all this stuff going on in the nursing home. Why don't you just take your mom home and get a in-house aide or something like that?
I couldn't. My mom had Alzheimer's. My mom was incontinent. She was, it would have been impossible. I would have loved to be able to do that. I think people need to also realize, one of the things that's been said in the press is that I had a nanny. Of course I had a nanny. I have 6 children. Of course I had a nanny. How do you care for an elderly parent, juggle your job, juggle your kids? Of course I needed help with childcare. I needed help with childcare because I had to go and take care of my mom and take care of my kids. Right. And, it wasn't that simple. I wish it would have been. I wish that there was a way that I could have cared for her in my home. But, again, hindsight's 2020. And when my mom was in the independent living facility and I had AIDS with her, for a long time, she was okay. She was okay. Once things went bad and she ended up in the hospital and she was released into this particular facility, that's when things really went wrong. And, I'm just, just still amazed that I made the choices that I did, because if I could go back, I would have fought the guardianship with everything I had.
Mm-hmm.
I was optimistic. I saw the good in it. I thought it was an independent person. I would have never put my mother in this facility, obviously. But, you don't know what you don't know. And I was naive in thinking I could continue to call the ombudsman and I could continue to ask people to help me. And I didn't realize that it seems that they're all kind of tied together and they're not working on the behalf of the families. They're working on behalf of protecting these nursing homes that are not providing a quality of care.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we got another question from Chrissy. Let's see. Chrissy says, is it true you brought a $46,000 check to the courthouse, which you did state you did, that should be enough to cover everything? Was the amount over $130K that they stated you needed to pay back?
Yeah, no, it was not. And I don't know where that came out. I don't know where that 130,000 number came from. I saw that as well somewhere in the paper. I also saw some ridiculous number about like $310,000. I
saw that. What's
crazy is, once these things get out, it's like, when you're a kid and you play the telephone game. Did you ever play that game, Joe?
I play the podcast game, but yes, I know the stories get broken down and then it changes over time.
And it ended up being, I've seen so many widely, reported amounts. I mean, and they just keep getting more and more inflated. The nursing home states that I owe them somewhere around, I think the number is $220,000. But that itself is a completely inflammatory number. We're not even sure how they came up with that, why I'm being charged more than they would regularly charge. Then you got to talk about the lawyers and they want their hands in that too. And then there's money for the guardian. So, there's this hugely inflated amount as far as they're concerned, which, is something that I can't even really address right now because I don't know how my lawyers are going to handle it and how that case is going to turn out. But certainly I don't believe that I owe that amount and I don't intend on paying it to them because it's an amount that's just not realistic and it's not reflective of what they would charge other people for my mother's care. But yeah, no, the government asked me to pay back $46,000 and that's exactly what I paid back. That was exactly what I reimbursed them for. And it was a lot larger than the amount that I was charged with. The amount that I took on the misdemeanor was $17,000. And that came from a number that I filled out in a form that, they stated that I filled out improperly and that, the funds were misappropriated. And I took full responsibility for it. I said, you know what? I take responsibility for it. It's my fault. I'm sorry. I will do whatever I can to make it right. I will take the misdemeanor charge. And I did. And that doesn't seem to be enough. I don't know that it'll ever be enough because I think no matter what at this point, people are going to make their judgments based on news headlines, not based on facts.
Okay. Now, I pretty much said everything I think you needed to say. I don't know how much more. I don't know how much more we could drive this thing home, but this is your side of the story. We have your side of the story, and the viewers can make the decision how they feel.
They can, and they can make their choices, and they can have their opinions. And if they want to hate on Donald Trump because I'm a Trump supporter, they can do that too. And I've seen a lot of that on your page, and that's not unusual. I deal with that every day.
Yeah, I try not to get too heavy into politics only because there's such a strong divide right now, and I don't like to waste my energy on arguing with people. Nobody's going to change my mind the way I feel. I don't think I'm going to change everybody else's mind, but I try to be respectful to how people feel because I've never walked in somebody's shoes. So I don't understand like exactly what they've gone through in their life for them to feel or think the way they do. So I just try to be respectful to people in the hopes that people respect me as well. Unfortunately, that's not the case all the time, but it is what it is. Nothing we could do about that. But looking back, Karyn, this whole thing that's been going on, would you have done anything differently now looking back?
Yeah, I definitely would have. There's a lot of things I would have done differently. And I have made a lot of mistakes and I have acknowledged that. And I do take responsibility for that. But I feel that, that is just clouding the judgment and, making it a situation where, this nursing home feels that, these criminal charges just negate their responsibility for what they did to my mom. And I don't think that should be the public's view. Let's just talk about my criminal charges and let's just say I took a plea, I pled guilty. Okay. But, how does that make it right? Everything else that they did. And how does that make it right for them to witch hunt somebody and string them up? How does that make it right for them to kill an elderly woman with Alzheimer's and have her in horrific conditions where she dies of bed sores all over her body. I find it very hard to grasp the fact that, there are people out there that can't realize that this could be your mom, this could be your grandmother. And yeah, you know what? You could make a financial mistake and you could be in a situation like I'm in, and maybe you wouldn't make a financial mistake. Maybe you wouldn't. But does that really take away from the fact that my mother died the way that she did and this nursing home doesn't want to take responsibility for it? Dan Benson, the director of the nursing home, it's been widely reported, and I'll quote him because he was quoted in the Palm Beach Post, and he celebrated outside the courthouse. That was what he did. And I feel that there's nothing to celebrate here. My mom was the victim. Whether you want to say my mom was a victim of, the nursing home neglect, if my mom was the victim of the guardianship system, my mom at the end of the day was the victim. And I don't know what he's celebrating. And you know what really sucks is I feel that he's celebrating because he thinks that this is going to diminish the credibility of the unlawful death suit. And I can assure you that I am going to fight for my mom and that I'm not going to let that happen. And I know that my mom's looking down on me and my mom wants me to lead this charge. And if I can change things for one family, then my charges and everything that I'm taking on completely make it worth it to me. And I take responsibility. If I have to serve my time or I have to be on house arrest, I'm going to do it. I mean, that's what I did. I took the plea. That's what my lawyers recommended I did. And I felt that it was the responsible thing to do. And I took responsibility. I feel very badly about a lot of things that happen. And that's definitely a big part of what I feel bad about. But, I have to stand up and fight now. And people need to realize that that's behind me. And now what's going to happen is going to be a whole new thing because I'm not going to let this go. I'm going to fight this with everything I have on, and honor my mother.
Okay. Well, look, at the end of the day, we all make mistakes in our life. I mean, I am definitely not immune to mistakes, and I don't think any person on this planet is immune to mistakes. We all make them, right?
We do.
Unfortunately for you, you're in the public eye, so it's a little different for you. You're going to deal with a lot of backlash from people, whereas somebody like myself that's not in like a tremendous public eye, it's going to be a little bit different. But these things happen, and we have to take responsibility, which you definitely did.
And not only that, I really am a big believer of taking any kind of negative situation that you're handed in your life and turning it into a positive. So I really hope that the people watching this will realize that, it is a very negative situation. It is a horrible headline. What happened to me is, my story. I have to live with my story. I have to live in my truth. But at the same time, I also have to do what's right for everybody else. And we have a really broken system. And I'm sitting here and I've been involved in that. My mom was a victim of that. And I want to fight for change. So, everybody should realize that that's going to be my mission from this point on. And like it or not, political side of the aisle that you're on, that's something we should all be able to agree on. And I think we've gotten to a point in America where we're so divisive that we forget that there's more things that we can agree on than not. And we have to focus on those things. We have to focus on the things that unite us, not what divides us. And I think when it comes to caring for an aging parent, a grandparent, you do the best you can, and sometimes you fail. And that's what happened to me. And I think that that's very relatable. And I hope that some viewers that are on the other side of the aisle can realize, as harsh as I might come across, as conservative as I might be, this goes beyond that issue. And this is something that we all need to think about.
Absolutely. Again, I know I do see some stuff in the chat, mistakes have consequences. Absolutely. I think every choice that we make in life has consequences, some good, some bad, but that's life.
I'm not afraid of the consequences. I'm appealing because the sentence was unfair based on my history and based on my lawyer's feeling that it's appealable. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to not face my consequences in any way, shape, or form. Right. It's a huge consequence for me to have a misdemeanor on my record, to plead a Social Security fraud, to be in court in a criminal proceeding in federal court. I mean, these are things that I would have never imagined would happen to me. I mean, if you look at my history of who I am, this is not at all anything even remotely that has ever been on my radar screen. And it's a really hard pill to swallow, but I'm taking it. I'm moving forward with it. I'll take responsibility. I'll do whatever the sentence requires me to do. on appeal, which hopefully we will get the appeal. But, it has to be a reasonable sentence. If you look at other cases out there, my sentence really seems very harsh.
Mm-hmm. What is this? It's a long one. Peter, when we got grandma from the home, she was living in Arizona. She came to us as a meatball addicted to morphine. I'm guessing that's like a vegetable. It was a sin that what they did to her while she was there. Within 3 months of living with us, she was in as good of health as someone who is 80 years old could be. They treat them like shit.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He's definitely singing my song here because, my mom, before going into this facility, she was, vibrant and would talk to us and, would sing with us and hang out with us. And, my mom wasn't able to be by herself. She wasn't able to make good decisions. She couldn't remember anything, but she was happy. My mom was happy. And really pretty much from the day that she stepped foot in that facility, that all changed. And I do feel that a big part of the reason that changed was the amount of antidepressants, sedation medications, and other things they had her on. And I fought that tooth and nail for as long as I could. And they would, do everything in their power to, give her the medication. And that, again, came into play when they appointed that guardian. My mother was heavily sedated. She was just never the same. Never the same. She wasn't the same person. It was like her soul was stolen.
Dana said something. I didn't get the whole thing. Oh, okay, there we go. This just popped up. But I understand that if she could afford 46, I guess, thousand in the bank to pay off the debt, how does she not have the money for in-home 24/7 care?
What's sad is that $46,000 wouldn't even touch what you would need to keep your parent at home with 24/7 care. And unfortunately, my mom was incontinent. She needed to be dressed. She needed to be bathed. She couldn't walk. She had to be assisted. She had memory loss. There was a million reasons why she needed to be in a skilled care nursing facility. This facility probably wasn't the right one. And yeah, if I had hundreds of thousands of dollars, I could have kept her in my home, but the $46,000 wouldn't have even touched what you need for care. It's unfortunate that we have a really broken, system in America that doesn't allow people to really properly care for their aging parents, and that's something that we all have to fight for change on.
We're going to take some callers. I always promised my guests that they could call in, so I have a bunch of people in the pipeline right now. So we're going to pull up I'm going to pull up a couple of callers before we end this podcast. So let me go down the line here and see what we got. Let's pull up a caller right now. This is Michael. Michael, hello.
Good evening. Hi, Karyn. How are you doing?
Hi, Michael. I recognize you. You're on my Facebook page pretty often.
And I've been listening to Karyn's shows. I've been watching her on the television and pretty much know her pretty good. And I got to say that she is one very caring person, actually. If you really, really look at what she has done, how she's trying to present herself, and the passion she has for the politics, defending Roger Stone, who I believe also was railroaded by the U.S. government. And she's putting herself out there. And I think when you put yourself out there, you're going to be a target. Anybody can be a target. And I got to also bring up something about the news reports, all these negative news reports that I've been reading, especially the ones in Florida. One of them starts off like, lock her up. And as you know, that's one of those mantras that some of the Trump supporters say regarding Hillary Clinton. Now, the thing is that if you really look at who are submitting these reports, you think that newspapers still have staff reporters on their premises anymore? Do you really think that they do? Usually it's citizens submitting reports to the newspapers now. It's that way. I'm from Rochester, New York. It's that way in Rochester. It's locally in Canandaigua. They locally have been going after this congressman named Brian Kolb. I don't think you may have heard of him, the drunk driver who actually told his constituents not to drink and drive. I think everybody's heard that story. And he's now lost his minority position in Albany. This is not our moral bill anymore. These are just people submitting reports and making things according to their own political leanings. look at anybody who has submitted a report to anything from the Miami Herald to the Tampa Bay Post, anybody, they're usually not staff reporters. Usually they are just citizens that are sending things off because, newspapers are no longer affording to have their own staff reporters. That my newspaper, the Democrat and Chronicle right now, is about 75% USA Today. They throw in the USA Today and about one page of local stuff. And if you really look at it, it's just citizens sending in stuff to report on things. These are people that are not fact checking. In fact, the Democrat and Chronicle has approximately 30 spelling errors per issue. Nobody's checking anything anymore. But when it goes out there, it's in print, so it's got to be true.
Of course. Well, and that's there's so many inaccuracies in my stories, and it just seems like once these stories get published, whether it's my case or a number of other cases I've worked on, all of a sudden you see it in the news, and by the third or fourth article, the narrative starts to shift. The facts change, the numbers change, and all of a sudden it's a story with alternative facts. And this happens to a lot of people, and this is again a bipartisan issue. This isn't even about, me being a Republican. Our newspapers have changed, and newspapers are a dying medium. And I don't know that people really realize that. And you're totally right, Michael. A lot of them are partnered with larger papers, whether it be USA Today or, if you look at some of the spinoff articles on mine, like the Naples Daily News is right straight from the Palm Beach Post. So it's the same article repurposed for a local market. And they don't really get their facts right. And a lot of these reporters are freelancers. And that's quite frankly because they can't budget for it anymore because everything's moved to the internet. And the problem that we have on the internet is that we haven't figured out how to regulate that yet. And we haven't figured out how to moderate it yet. And we haven't figured out how to stop fake news from spreading.
That's absolutely correct. And
Michael, do you think based on Karyn's political views that she's gotten a kind of a stronger sentencing than somebody else that maybe would have been on Democratic side?
Well, look at the example of, do you remember Milo Yiannopoulos, that Greek conservative that was going to have a book deal? He was going to have his own show on Fox or whatever. And they had to dig about a decade to find some damning statement that he had made because he is homosexual, and they tried to find anything where he had said something that might be considered unsavory. And everything, all of a sudden, within a night, his book deal got canceled. Everything got canceled. He's now in debt. This is more about destruction. This is about destroying people now. They want to destroy anybody who's conservative. Somebody that I'm also a big fan of, Tomi Lahren. They tried to go after Tomi Lahren, tried to go into when she was at the University of Las Vegas, her sexual history, just to make her look bad, to make her look stupid. Anything she says, they'll try to harass her in restaurants, embarrass her, and even they don't even care if their parents are with her. They'll do something. It's an evil culture of very evil people, really now.
It's crazy, but I think in this era of the world that we live in now, especially with social media, it's both sides. Everybody's trying to tear each other apart, and I don't know. It's kind of sad to me. It's sad to see it.
I was going to say something like on Bill Maher. They will always put a conservative on for their point of view, but they'll also match it against 3 liberals. And they'll have a big audience full of liberals that'll boo every statement the conservative makes, of course, and share everything. The liberal can say the moon is green. It's made of green cheese, and everyone will wildly applaud. It's the stacks. You're probably right that liberal side is probably sometimes attacked on an unfair basis, but I don't think to the level that conservatives are. I think if you really want to measure it, it's probably 75-25.
I would agree. And I think it's because we're winning, Michael. And I think they can't stand it. And they can't stand the fact that the president's doing an amazing job. And maybe they didn't vote for him or they don't support him. And it's literally killing them. It's driving them insane. And they have nothing to do but to fight back and be bullies and be nasty and be mean and make ugly comments at other people and scream at them and yell and beat them up because they can't handle their own anger over somebody being elected that they did not choose. The man is doing an amazing job He's making America great again. He did exactly what he said he's going to do. And, there's so many of us that support him, and they can't stand it. They can't stand it. They're going to lose in 2020, and it's going to happen. Mark my words.
Already Cory Booker has dropped out. And I have said before that the unemployment rate is so low now that even liberals are working.
It's true.
Hopefully everybody's working. Michael, thank you very much for your time, my friend. I appreciate it.
Michael.
I'm gonna take one more caller before we close this episode out, guys. Again, for the listeners, please do me a favor, guys. If I'm missing something here, if I'm missing any questions to ask, please help me out. Ask questions. Karyn is here to answer questions, so just be nice about it. But I'm gonna take another caller real quick while people are kind of getting their questions together. Let's see who we got here. Steven. Hello, Steven.
Hey, Joe. How are you? Hey, Karyn.
Hello. Hey. How are you?
I think there's a couple points that need to be made, even on a plea deal. It doesn't matter, you could argue the facts of the case, and I think they're on Karyn's side for certain. I'm sure she loves her mother, and I'm sure that people have go through the same situation as she has stated. But the federal government has a 99% success rate in federal court. Is because 98% of them, as Lord Conrad Black has written, who just received a pardon by President Trump, about how the federal government has all the resources, all the time, and all the effort they can to destroy somebody like Karyn. Mm-hmm. And the prosecutional system that we have now in the government, and you can see this in the impeachment, whether it's Democrat or Republican, everybody used to be a prosecutor, everybody used to be a judge, and it has become such a litigious society and prosecutional society that it doesn't matter what party it is. And I do believe in Karyn's case, she was right in the bullseye, and they were going to come after her. There's no doubt in my military mind that in many cases, particularly in Florida, where I grew up, in Jupiter, now in Mobile, Alabama, but it happens here as well as everywhere in this country, is that the prosecutions in federal cases have become so politicized that it's worked. I know a billionaire in Boca Raton he's worth $3.4 billion, and he was popped for $170,000 and back taxes on employees he did not even know about, and had to go to federal prison. And just like in Karyn's case, the federal government puts you in such a position as, what do? Mortgage your house, spend the rest of whatever money you have to fight the federal government. And so
if you have it, what about the people that don't have it, Stephen? What about the people that don't have it? And nobody's thinking about that. Nobody's thinking about them. And it's a really litigious situation now.
You can't get you're not going to get a court-appointed attorney to fight for you like you do when you pay somebody $250,000. And so, we've got to get out of this political getting at people because they're vocal about their political parties. But I know this, I've watched Karyn, and I've followed Karyn for quite some time, and I hope the Republican Party does not deter her involvement, because the one thing that I do see in the Republican Party, and I've been a Republican, served General Haig, served 4 presidents, and I've noticed that the Republican Party are the ones that are quickest to shun you or be done with you. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how much time, effort, and resources and heart you put in something goes wrong, they discard you. The Democratic Party holds people together. That's the one thing I do see, hopefully, as we go through this, because what Karyn's going through is the same thing I went through, same thing President Trump's going through. If they can't get you for this, they'll find something. It's called the spaghetti effect. Throw it up against the wall, see what we can get, see how we can screw her over, see how we can destroy her life. And in this social media world, unfortunately, don't worry about the comments. Don't worry about there's going to be haters, and there'll always be. You'll never explain yourself away. Know that what you do is care for your mother and your family. Like you said, you have a big, beautiful family. I know that. That's what you need to concern yourself with. Everything else will come along with this.
Thanks, Stephen.
Steve, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling in and being a part of the live experience.
Good to be with you, Joe.
Thank you.
And love you, Karyn.
Love you too, Steven.
So there you go. So
that was amazing. That was
yeah,
great. He calls in. He's a good person. He's got a big heart.
Seems like a very nice guy. I'm glad we had some callers in. Guys and girls for listening and tuning in. It's kind of almost out of time, so that's who I could get on right now. I try my best, guys. I do this on my own, so please bear with me as I get the questions out and get your questions popped up on screen and get callers to call in. But somebody is requesting to have their question asked. I don't know what their question is, though. But Karyn, I want to thank you for taking the time to be
You're so
on
welcome. I love doing your show, and I'll be back. I'll be back. If you'll have me back on, of course. We'll have to see what your audience says.
Well, look, I love having people on and talking, and whoever tunes in. But I would love to have you back on, Karyn.
Awesome. I look forward.
Again, we all make mistakes in life, and we have to face our consequences sometimes. I've been there myself. I think I could speak for probably every person on this planet. We've all made mistakes, and we all have to suffer the consequences for these mistakes. So, but I'm wishing you the best of luck, Karyn. And, thank you again for talking your mind, and telling us your side of the story. That's one thing I always invite on my podcast is I want people to speak their mind and say what's on their mind and talk about it, whether those agree or disagree. That's a great thing about the world. We all don't agree. Absolutely. So we all have a different way of thinking. So that's great. But yes, you also have something on TV right now, right?
I do. I have Inside Edition, which we filmed today. So I hope everybody will catch it. I think we might be missing a little bit of the beginning of it for our Florida people, but that's okay. I have it on record. I'll certainly post it to my Facebook when it airs, and I'll share it with you so you can post it with your audience.
Great. Thank you again, Karyn. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks, Joe.
We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, guys, that's a wrap for this episode. Episode 75, Guy Think Podcast live experience went live again. I hope I did the best I can for all the viewers out there. Whether positive or negative, we try to keep it classy during the episode, though. But I'm glad that people did participate. People chatted. People called in. People left their comments. It's really cool. And I got to credit Karyn. Whatever you think about her, she did have the guts to come on the show live and actually answer your questions. So I thought that was really cool, right? Nobody does what I do, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but you're not going to watch the news. You may see a live show, but you're not able to interact from your couch, but you can do that on my podcast. That's why my podcast is #1 in Florida, and I'm really happy and proud of that. And I hope to make this thing grow even more and gain more listeners and followers and do, just have some really interesting guests that all of you like and want to hear about, want to interact with. That's the most important thing, interacting with. So thank you, guys. Also, the winner of the wrestling tickets for Blueprint Pro Wrestling, January 31st, Friday night, is Peter Villano. Congratulations to Peter. He was the winner. He gets 4 tickets to this wrestling event in Deerfield Beach, Florida at the DS Sportsplex. I always say that wrong. I don't know why. But he's going to get those tickets and a poster as well. So guys, girls, if you have families, if you have kids, it's a really fun time in Deerfield Beach, Florida for this wrestling event. You get to watch this cool event. They have wrestlers that have been in the WWE, up and coming stars, and you can interact with these guys and girls that wrestle in the ring. It is so much fun. Really intimate environment. Really cool. It's just a night out for the family. So check it out. Blueprint Pro Wrestling. You can check them out on Facebook and get tickets for the event. So again, congratulations to Peter Villano. Thank you again to Karyn Turk for joining the show. And do me a favor, guys, before you go, just do me a favor. If you have Apple, rate me 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. It really helps with the analytics, I guess. That's what they say. So the more 5-star ratings I have, the better. I think I'm at like 56 right now. Do a guy a favor. If you tuned in this long, I hope you like me. You know what I'm saying? I'm a neutral kind of guy. I really want to hear everybody out. So please, guys, help me out. I want to do more cool shows like this. And you can follow me on social media at A Guy Think Podcast, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. And of course, the website, guythinkpodcast.com, and subscribe. That's the most important thing. So again, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all your comments, whether positive or negative. I appreciate you guys interacting and being a part of the live experience. Special thank you to the mystery moderator for taking complete control. Jan, thank you very much. She said, thanks. That was a great show. Thank you, Jan. I appreciate that. That was really nice of you. All right, guys. It's Monday night. Get back with your families. Thank you again for tuning in. Love you all. Thank you always. And God bless. We'll see you next episode. We have a psychic on the next episode. So if you want a live reading, now's the time for free. You're going to get a free psychic live reading. Hallie Elise, rated top 100 in the United States of America. She's been on the podcast before. It was amazing. We had so many people interact, and she told so many, I don't know, do I say fortunes? I don't even know if that's the right word, but I'm going to say it. And people loved it. So now it's going to be a little different. It's going to be even more interactive. And if you want to call in, you can do that too. So that'll be next week. So stay tuned for the updates. Love you guys. Have a great night. Happy Monday. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.